Oh well, most of them helped me. When my son got killed, you know who helped me? A white person. They came to my door and helped me bury my son. I couldn't believe it. So it doesn't matter what color you are, but you need to know where your heart is. You need to know who are you looking at? Who are you trusting? What are you thinking about? Who are you loving? You need to tell your child each and every day, no matter what's going on. I don't care what are they doing. I love you. Your mother and father you need to respect because you never know when you'll be gone. I just want all of y'all to know we need to unite in some kind of way. Some kind of way. Because it's killing every day. It's hate every day. I don't have a solution. I don't know the solution. I wish I did, because if we did, we wouldn't be standing here right now. But I'll tell you one thing. I will be getting justice for my son. People will know what happened, and I will do this until my last breath. And I hope somebody come forward to me and say, I can help you, Miss Kim, because I got people that say, you know what, Miss Kim, I'm going to help you. I ain't seen them yet. I'm still standing. I lost my home. I lost my car. They don't know that. You know it now. I'm homeless. I really don't have no place to stay. It looks like I do. I try to stay focused. That's all I can do is stay focused. Because if I fall, that's it. I still have other children. Even though they're grown, they're my children. He had a daughter. She's 2 years old now. What am I going to tell her? What am I going to tell her? Your father got shot next to me. This is what happened. That's something I have to think about. So when you call 911, think about what you're calling it for. Think about what you're saying. And thinking about who you're talking through that line. And like I said, it's not all bad cops out there. We got some good ones. But them good ones need to weed out them bad ones. Because it's getting really terrible out here. And like I said, it doesn't matter what color you are. And I love you all. And I hope somebody's really listening to me. And love each other. Because time is short. Real short. Thank you. I want to reassure Ms. Kim Thomas that everybody was listening. So can everybody please say, we heard you?
We heard you!
And can we all take a moment to recognize Ms. Kim's son, Shalik Moss? Can we repeat Shalik Moss's name, please?
Shalik Moss.
Keep that name in your hearts and in your minds when you go home. And remember that not everything you see on the news is the truth. It's twisted to get clicks, ratings, etc. And what gets more ratings than, demonizing the Black community. So we want to bring up Ms. Tanya Lovelace. She is from the Women of Color Network, and she's come to shed light about how white supremacy affects her community, and what her organization is doing to combat it. Ms. Thomas, Kim, thank you. Thank you so much for sharing your voice today and your story. I heard you. We all heard you. Thank you. Thank you.
I want to talk a little bit about white supremacy to really define what it is that we're gathered here for today. The definition of white supremacy is a person who believes that the white race is inherently superior to other races and that white people should have control over people of other races. White supremacist ideology in the United States today is dominated by the belief that whites are doomed to extinction by a rising tide of non-whites who are controlled, and dare I say, this information, the way it's shared, is that it's who are controlled and manipulated by Jews, which means then that non-white people or people of color and Jewish populations are directly targeted by this. And this core belief is exemplified by such slogans as what they call the 14 words: we must secure the existence of our people and a future for white children. So that is the foundation of this. Most white supremacists do not belong to organized hate groups. but rather come together in unorganized ways and also act individually. And so the size of the white supremacist movement is much bigger than we actually think it is, because folks don't always show up in organized ways. Among the domestic extremist movements active in the United States, the white supremacist movement is far more violent, committing about 83% of the extremist-related murders in the past 10 years, and being involved in about 52% of the shootouts between extremists and police. And so when we talk about terrorist plots and those sorts of things, we really are talking about these white supremacist groups that are coming together and that are also acting out in individual ways. And so we really have to call terrorism what terrorism is. White supremacy is based on power and control, which is also the basis for sexism, for classism, for xenophobia, for heterosexism, for transphobia, for Islamophobia, and all isms and all of these phobias based on people's identity. Power and control is the basis for sexual harassment, for sexual assault, domestic violence, dating violence, stalking, and all forms of violence. So none of us are free unless we are all free. We have to stand together to fight against white supremacy and all forms of isms and all forms of violence. The Women of Color Network is a national grassroots organization which promotes the leadership of women of color advocates and activists in the quest to end violence against all women and their communities. While our work is conducted largely within the movement to end intimate partner violence, we broadened our mission long ago beyond the fields of domestic violence and sexual assault to really look at those issues that are impacting communities of color broadly, such as human trafficking and police brutality, and to refocus our lens to more readily examine global context of colonialism, imperialism, capitalism, and all of the isms that I've mentioned so far, and the ways that they intersect in the lives of women of color, those who are on the margins of the margins. It is through this broad lens that we felt compelled to vocalize, and we feel compelled to vocalize our anguish and pain over the senseless acts of violence, police-based militarism, and loss of life and dignity that we are seeing in our communities. And what we call this is jagged justice. When we are seeing the kind of justice that's happening in our communities, when we're seeing the kind of violence that's happening against marginalized communities, we are saying that that is jagged justice. And we receive this jagged justice through pain, through bloodshed, through murder, through death sentences for our boys, who wear hoodies and eat Skittles, right? And jail sentences and ankle bracelets for women who fire off warning shots when they're being abused by their abusers. And so we really stand together around these issues, and we rage against the machine of racism and oppression in the streets. Jagged justice is embedded in the limited choices or measures that we are forced to accept, which do not fully meet our needs and leave ourselves, our families, and our communities in pain, broken by the criminal, civil, and all forms of justice that we are handed. Our justice is jagged with centuries upon centuries of wounds passed on from generation to generation. So we all, as women and men and those across gender identity, as queer people of color, as gender nonconforming, gender fluid, cisgender, lesbian, gay, bisexual, heterosexual people of Asian, African, Latin, Native, and Middle Eastern descent, we are often unseen and expendable. We are collectively targeted. It is time that we collectively speak out, act out, and force change. It is time that we connect the dots across the common threads of institutionalized sentient fear and contempt that bestows absolute power and permission to choke out Black and brown lives and ignore our request to simply breathe. It is the same thread that ignores the voices of victims of sexual harassment and sexual assault by powerful men that are now being brought down before our very eyes. Women of Color Network, Inc. realizes the healing and wholeness of communities of color and all communities at the margins, and say that we can only be manifested, and this healing can only be manifested if we are working cooperatively, if we are working in collaborative connections, and if we're working as community members as a whole. We commit to a safe platform and seek to provide resources and mobilize advocates and activists and community members to address this jagged justice. So we ask you to stand in commitment as well, because it is not the blatant acts of white supremacy and sexism and homophobia and Islamophobia. It is those of us that stand by and act like nothing is happening. Those who stand by and watch any of these acts happen in front of us. Those who stand by and listen to these sorts of statements and negative approaches. We create an environment and a culture that allows these things to happen. So we ask you to stand up, use your voice, and speak out. Thank you.
So I want to thank Tanya for coming and sharing what the Women of Color Network is doing for women and marginalized communities. I did want to quickly quote someone that I follow. His name is Quanell X. He is the leader of the New Black Panther Party. And he talks about, my favorite quote that he says is, let them demonize us now, history will vindicate us. And that, I talk about that because of the fact that when Martin Luther King was marching on Selma and demonstrating and fighting for civil rights, the media demonized him. They called him a menace. They called him a black militant. They said that he's going to stir up a race war. And as we see now, afterward, he was on the right side of history. So that's where we want to stand, on the right side of history at all times. Rosa Parks, demonized, blamed for the boycotts and the destruction of the busing companies. We see now that she was honorable in what she did to fight the system that she felt was unfair, because it is. So when you see someone on the news fighting and they get arrested, as Asa Khalif did, Black Lives Matter PA chapter director, as he did, stop and ask yourself, what will history say about him later on, when we see that he fought for us and he's on the right side of history. So that's where we want to make sure we are. We are so honored to have an activist that came here all the way from Philadelphia on his motorcycle in the freezing cold to be here. He is famously known for securing every single permit in the Philadelphia area where the DNC was holding their convention, and giving it to the Bernie people, because that's the, again, right side of history. So we want to introduce Billy Taylor, and we really appreciate him being here. Billy.
Thank you. My name is Billy Taylor. I served as the executive director of Philly.FYI. We led the protest in Philadelphia for the DNC. As of this point, I've been around the nation as a speaker, an activist, demonstrator. Went to Washington quite a few times, lobbying legislators and so on. The things that I've personally encountered and witnessed, just thinking about what this event was today, I kind of wanted to talk about systematic racism. A lot of people will say this, but they don't really get in depth to thoroughly explain how this happens. I went to North Dakota to stand with the Lakotans against the DAPL pipeline. This is a pipeline that they ran through, was scheduled to go through Bismarck, which is a white area. They complained about it, then they rerouted it through native land, through treaty land. The requests were overlooked. It was really blatant what they did to the natives. In Bismarck, they complained, they quickly moved the pipeline. Out at Standing Rock with the Lakotans, they put up more than a fight. I personally witnessed chemical warfare on peaceful people. I was there for November 20th. There was literally 6 to 7 hours, there was blackout media of chemical warfare. The projectiles they used, they had everything. It's not like in the 60s where they had just water hoses. They have water cannons. 3 times for 7 hours straight, they blasted peaceful people with water cannons in sub-zero temperatures. And 3 times they must have had 60-gallon barrels of mace where they would swap it up. So occasionally you would get hit with mace. Now your adrenaline's going, so when you get hit with this water, it really doesn't affect you because you don't feel it. But then when you get hit with the mace, so I personally seen what our government does in this kind of systematic racism that still occurs. Another thing that I really wanted to talk about was the police. One of the longest, most costly wars that really a lot of people don't talk about is the war on drugs. It's a failing war, and this is a systematic racism right there. The soldiers that they use for this war is the police department. Now, I believe it's more of a class war. It's the rich versus the poor. But what's happening is I think our ghettos or hoods are being targeted because the majority of them are, low income. So that's the reason why, in my opinion, you kind of see more black and brown in prison systems. But this is a systematic where they're targeting the hoods. I'm from Philadelphia. I've gone to the hoods. I've been there at night. It's like the Wild Wild West. They go down, they shake down the corners. If there's not trouble, they go looking for the trouble. So the crimes aren't even existing, and they go looking for it. Now, in Philadelphia, I can speak for my community. They literally will go up to individuals of black and brown and ID them, just randomly. You're sitting on your step. I've heard story after story. Someone just on their porch. They come up, ID them. They're looking for warrants. They're looking for guns. Now, there is no crime. There's no trouble. These are police officers going and looking for trouble. They are creating the trouble. They're creating the crimes. Now, one name that was mentioned was Asa. He's one of my role models. I look up to him. Asa Khalif of, the PA chapter of Black Lives Matter. A lot of people have this certain idea of Black Lives Matter. First off, each chapter is its own entity. So you can't let one individual speak for them all. But I know in Philadelphia, he is the only one policing the police. What she was speaking about earlier was there was an individual in Philadelphia that was shot in the back. He was unarmed at the time. The cops were looking to sweep this under the rug until Asa went and stepped up. And it's those radical things, the radical statements that get the attention you need to really get justice. But they were sweeping this under the rug. Now Asa stepped up. This officer lost his job. That's not good enough. Him losing his job is proof in itself that he murdered an individual. But what's happening is they lose their job, they get a pension, so they get an early retirement. There's no jail time for police officers. Now, in Philadelphia, one of the things I do is I specifically target police because I believe if you want a revolution, it really starts with the police department. They have to, within themselves, see what is happening. Again, the war on drugs. It's now classified as a mental health issue. So we are literally locking people up for health issues, throwing them in cages. And, you have to think 50% of our prison systems are filled with for drug offenses. Majority of those are non-violent offenses. So half of our prisons, you're talking the mass incarceration, they don't belong there. You have certain things such as the 13th Amendment. I encourage everybody. There's a documentary called 13. Watch it. You'll understand the systematic racism and the reason why we are where we are to date. The 13th Amendment, it abolished slavery, but there's a clause. Because if you're incarcerated, that does not apply to you. We are locking people up in mass numbers. They're charging our government for their stay while making them work at cheaper than child slave labor in third world countries to produce products for companies like Walmart. So we literally have slaves in America to date. That is happening. Now, I think if the majority of Americans knew this crap was going on, it wouldn't go on. But we have slaves to date in America. Look in our prison systems. There is no reason. Literally, they're making $20, $80 a month for working 40 plus hours. That's slavery. That's what's happening. Now, I agree. A lot of people debate me about the prisons. Look, if they're criminals, murderers, rapers, we need prisons for those people. But someone that goes out, an 18-year-old kid that gets locked up for an ounce of weed does not need a felony because what it's doing is creating a revolving door. That kid, he's going to go out and work a job at McDonald's. He can't provide anything better because no one will give him a chance because once you have a felony, that sticks with you. Now this kid wants to have a family.
How's he going to provide for his family? He can't. He has to rob, cheat, and steal just to give bread to his a family. We are creating a revolving door. This is a system that does not work for the people. And it's literally, we need to unite. I'm sorry. This is a subject that really angers me is the mass incarceration. There's a number of reasons that this is going on. You have the 3-strike rule. In some states, you could steal bread 3 times and you can go to jail for life. For life. God damn it, give them a job. You think anybody would want to steal bread if you had a job and could provide for it? I mean, we have people living under underpasses. Who wants to sleep out in the streets if we had the work for them? But here we are. We're giving money to elites. To me, prison owners are slave owners. Corporations. We need money to come back into our community to stop this revolving door. Education is definitely important. You have 3 strikes. You have the war on drugs, mass incarceration, which that was pushed through by the Clinton, by Democrats. You know, we sit here and we think we have 2 parties, but we don't. It's a 2-party dictatorship. They're really one side to each coin. So with me, I'm a political activist. I believe no matter what your issue is, it really comes back to the politicians that are passing this law. I work with so many good organizations, and they work to rehabilitate individuals that have been in prison, to stop the youth from going into prison, the PTS that they'll gain from prison. But you're spinning your wheels to me. It's great work that these people do, but a politician with the stroke of a pen can lock up millions of people. And it's the brown and black communities that are specifically being targeted. That's all I can really say for today. I'm sorry, I get emotional and my mind kind of goes wild with this stuff. Being in Philadelphia, I personally see a lot of things that I would love to change. My main issue is with the police department. They said earlier, I heard there's good cops out there. I don't believe it. I don't believe there's any good politicians. The reason why is it's the system that they are forced to work in. A cop may be a good individual going into the police force and have the best intentions, but when I see cops arresting bad cops, then I'll know there's good cops. Just like with politicians. When I see politicians being arrested and jailed, then I know there's good politicians out there pressing charges against them. I want to see a politician not go in based upon issues, based upon their job, saying accountability, because that's really what needs to happen, is accountability. If we had that, a lot of issues we have would not be going on. But give me one politician that says, if I do wrong, send me to jail. That's the person I'm voting for. Democrat, Republican, I don't care what you are. That's a good politician. Accountability. And I mean accountability with police department too. Everything. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Billy, for all the work that you do around the country, in Philadelphia, Standing Rock, Selecting Mission, which is super important. Because we can't forget the people that were originally oppressed and treated as cattle. So right now we are going to introduce Miss Angela Kirkland. She's a local activist, super powerful writer, speaker, and an artist. Here's Angela. Hi. I'm going to start off with something that may come off as a surprise to some of you, but I came this close to not showing up today. I almost flaked, pulled a no-show, ghosted, as we say now. I'm sick. If y'all remember that scene from Mean Girls, you know the words that follow right after that, right? That was my attempt at a joke. You should laugh. Okay. You know, that whole, I forgot I made other plans, I'm sorry. And it's been a while since I felt compelled to do much of anything except squeeze every last bit of joy that I possibly can out of my days. Because since that day in August, when a bunch of no-lived white dudes swarmed into Charlottesville with torches while chanting Nazi slogans,
I've wondered, how has anything I've done really helped anyone? How can I feel useful? How can I feel like I'm making a difference? When in this year of 2017, literal Nazis have become mainstream. Like, how can I feel I'm being effective at all when the very people inhabiting the White House allow this to go unchecked and even endorse it? Why am I here? I don't know. I feel like if we all had been listening to Black women from the very beginning, we wouldn't be here. Yeah. We'd all be Netflix and chilling right the hell now. We wouldn't be feeling like we have to stand on the Capitol steps and denounce white supremacist bullshit again on a Saturday in December. If we've been listening to Black women, this election would have actually gone in the direction everyone already assumed it was going to. We tried to save y'all! 94%! 94% of us, I am one of them, voted for the other one. We tried to save y'all. The stats prove it. We always do. And yet we go ignored, unheeded, supplanted, mocked, insulted, dehumanized, assaulted, killed, unmourned from the beginning. So if you're going to take one thing away from my words today, it must be, it absolutely must be, listen to Black women. Even if it means losing an opportunity to claim credit, even if it means losing out on attention, even if it means losing out on acclaim, even if it means more work for you, even if it means less money for you, even if, listen to Black women. Have them, in the words of iconic Congresswoman Maxine Waters, reclaim their time. Have them stop doing all the work for a change. Have them feel safe for a change. Have them feel respected for a change. Have them be first in line for a change. Have them not have to mourn the deaths of their children for a change. Have them live for a change. I'm about to end this, and I'm just saying now, when I end it, I don't want you to clap. I don't want you to cheer. I want a moment of silence. I want these words to hang in this air and ring in your ears for just a moment longer than usual, to serve as a reminder to yourselves. Because these aren't just my words. They are the words of countless other Black women living and long gone. These are the words of all of us that could have saved the world long ago. If enough ears, eyes, minds, and hearts had been open to them and been willing to take their lead in action. I'm going to tell you right now, it's going to get a hell of a lot worse. It's really going to be on some fuck shit before it gets better. But it can and will get better if we all listen for a change. Thank you.
We want to thank Angela for her powerful words and her knowledge that she wants to come and spread, and we appreciate what's not so easy sometimes. When truth is demonized, it's not easy for a lot of people to speak up, so we do appreciate everybody that's coming and putting themselves at risk to share with you guys. We do want to ask if everybody can come up here a little bit to this area because the sound system is all the way up and it's pretty low, and as you see there's fire trucks and police and stuff like that. Next up we have Heidi Notario. She is from the LGBT Center of Central Pennsylvania. As Heidi comes up here, I would like to again thank the LGBT Center for all they do for people like my family, our organization, and what they're doing right now, allowing us to come and bring hot coffee to everybody here through the organization of Food Not Bombs. So here's Heidi.
I'm Heidi Notario. I'm the Vice President of the LGBT Center Board of Directors. I'm also here as a food advisor.